without further ado, anyway, we have you guys who are clued in by Zoom. You guys got your sources by email. Anyone here wants them? I have them printed out over here.
Okay.
Let's just recap, things that we said last week because we're picking up from that point. All right. We demonstrated from many sources that the function of the neshama is not to keep the body alive. Right? We brought sources that Adam Arishan was animate a whole hour before the neshama was put inside of him. And not only that, we brought another medrash that he was intelligent in the sense that, Hashem showed him all the generations that were going to come out of him before he had his neshama inside of him. He was alive, he was intelligent, and then he got his neshama. All right, so, so you don't need a neshama to be alive, you don't need a neshama to be intelligent. And we demonstrated that the neshama finds this world very alien, uncomfortable here. We brought a medrash from Tehillim that the neshama tries to leave at least once a day, wants to just leave the person, it's had enough, and Hashem has to intervene and to keep it in the body. Right? So the neshama and the guf are not a natural fit. Right, and the guf does not need the neshama to stay alive, and the neshama doesn't enjoy this world and doesn't enjoy its sojourn in the body. So the question is, if the neshama doesn't make you alive and it doesn't make you intelligent necessarily, we're going to qualify that this evening. What does a neshama do? All right, that is tonight's topic. Right? So. We did learn one thing last week. We did learn one thing that the Onkelos that everyone quotes, that Vayadam leNefesh Chaya, that when he got his neshama, Nefesh Chaya, Onkelos translates as Rucha Memalala, right? That the neshama gave Adam Rishon the ability of speech. Now, so and as we brought last week, Rav Zera figured out that Rava sent a golem to speak to him, right? Yeah. Right? Rav Zera figured out that it was a golem, right? Not a real human being, but because it couldn't speak. But it was intelligent. It understood the directions. Rava sent him to Rav Zera's house. So this raises a question. What is it about speech that requires a neshama? Speech is communication. The animals don't have language as we know it, but we know, anyone who's a pet owner, they understand commands, and with their own kinds they could communicate, whether it's mating calls, whether it's warning of danger, etc., etc. So what is it about speech that needs a neshama? Okay. All right, so these are the issues that we're going to tackle tonight. But speech is definitely a clue to what the neshama is about and what the neshama gives the adam. Let me just make a l'chaim. Amen. Okay. So now, on the source sheet, we have from the Derech Hashem of the Ramchal. I'll say it outside, but you have the source for it. The very first source says something very interesting about one thing that the neshama does for the guf. It's from Chelik Av Perek Gimel, and it says, so even though we only perceive the neshama in the guf, we feel we may have a neshama because of being alive or because it gives us a form of intelligence, which we have to qualify, because I say the human being is naturally intelligent even without a neshama. Right, which we'll explain, right? But it has a special quality. Listen to what the Ramchal says. Hine yesh bakuka shetizakech etzem haguf v'chomro v'taleu ilach ilu yatrolis alos ima bahana b'shleimus. The neshama has a unique quality that it could purify the body and elevate it, level after level after level. Right? Until the body itself becomes immortal, like the neshama, And the body itself could also go to Olam Haba, which we'll discuss later in the series. This big machlokas, the Rambam and the Mekubal, whether there's a body in Olam Haba, but the Ramchal is of that mindset, that the body ultimately not only is Zochah to Tchias HaMesim, that everyone agrees to, right? But that the body after Tchias HaMesim, when this world will end, the body will go to Olam Haba also. Which was the Rambam didn't think that was the case, but when we're going to go into the Ramchal's model, the Ramchal constructed a model of a different type of body that actually answers the concerns of the Rambam.
There's two different gufs, right? Guf haruchani.
No, so that's what he said. What he's alluding to over here, the body becomes spiritual. See, the Rambam's objection to how there could be a body in Olam Haba. I mean, I know we're going to talk about it later, but heck, we'll talk about it now. The Rambam's objection is that what, you're going to have a stomach and you don't eat? Like, there's no eating in Olam Haba, in Ba'achil, lo shtia, right? You're right, you have, kishkas, you don't excrete. You'll have lungs and you don't smoke. It's all, right? The guf will be a bria levatola. A bria levatola is nothing good. Having a useless piece of machinery that's waste. That's not shleimus, and that's why he objected to the idea that there should be a body as we know it in Olam Haba, which it seems that Rav Saadia Gaon and others thought that there was, and their taina was from a simple issue of justice, because the body was equal partners in the mitzvahs. So why should the schar of the mitzvahs only be for the neshama, right? Right. No, so now the Ramchal actually dropped a hint to what we sometimes writes in Derech Hashem shorthand, things that he explains in his other books at much greater length. But he dropped a hint. He says that the neshama purifies the body. The Ramchal in the Das Tvunis builds a 10,000-year model. So I hope no one's in a rush, right? Right? It's 10,000 years, meaning from Brias Olam till that he describes that, of course, Shital Fish didn't have the first 6,000 years is this world, which included in this world is that everyone agrees, it's one of the Yudkim Ekron, there'll be Tchias HaMesim in this world still. So that which they say Mashiach has to come before the year 40, it means he has to come a little bit, quite a bit before, because we have to fit in Tchias HaMesim before the game over. Which, by the way, with only 200 and some odd years left, we're very, very behind in the global warming. If the world, Chazal described that in the 7th millennium, it's water everywhere for 1,000 years, like by the Mabul, until the Rebbe reconstructs the world as Olam Haba. So we're very behind in melting the polar caps. We have to produce more carbon emissions. And we have to increase the global warming. So if there's one afternoon you don't have any zitzvah to learn, just take the car out for a spin and make your contribution to bring about Achros Hayamim.
You see, you're a Trump man.
Yeah, right. Right. Because we've got to melt the polar caps in only 200 some odd years, because the Chazal described that tzadikim shotim al pnei hamayim. But the Ramchal builds a model to satisfy the Rambam that we said that gradually the neshama is going to absorb the body. And he divides up into that in the 7th millennium where Chazal describe the body shatim al pnei hamayim. His teaching is that the body lives off the neshama. It doesn't need to eat anymore. And that's the wings. Right, I'm getting a phone call icon. I have no idea what that means. Hope everyone can still hear me. But the wings refers to the power of the neshama extending beyond the body, surrounding the body, sustaining the body, and that's why you could fly over the water. That's in the 7th millennium. In the 8th millennium, we begin to lose the coarser parts of the body, like the bowels and things like that. That they become ruchnius, get rid of them, but the higher parts of the body still stay, as in the eyes, the ears, the mind, right? And then those go in the 9th millennium, and in the 9th millennium, there's just a koach klali called the guf. It's just a general thing, because it's becoming more and more ruchani. And then by the 10th millennium, Ha'asiri Kodesh, the guf has been totally absorbed and synthesized with the neshama to the point, as the way Ramchal describes it, is that you would say that the neshama has a talent, a koach, that was once called a guf, and that once took up space, but now it's totally spiritual. So you see how the Ramchal built a model that satisfies all the Rambam's objections. The Rambam's objections was to a body as we know it, but now since we talk about what he just alluded to over here, that the neshama could elevate the body and convert it into ruchnius, right? So then so now you satisfy both that the body will get schar, but the body won't be a bria levato because it takes on a different form that finds olam haba totally natural. It could become a regular citizen over there because it has become totally ruchani. And this process, of course, builds up in potential in this lifetime. And that's the secret that the neshama is called a candle. Ner Hashem nishmas adam, right? Because the ner, to illuminate the darkness of the body, right? The neshama comes in to shine and dispel the darkness of the body. So that's one talent that the neshama has. Your biochemical life force doesn't cause your body to evolve, for lack of a better word. You stay the same person you were with your biochemical life force. The neshama is transforming you, right? Transforming you, and that's the necessity for Tchias HaMesim, for that transformation to go from potential to actual. Right now, this time I was just building up the potential. It's by the resurrection. So one thing that the neshama does that the biochemical life form doesn't do, for lack of a better, it evolves the body. Yeah, I already want to say something.
Is it different than a malach?
Yes. Very good. We're going to talk about it. So, a malach doesn't take on a physical form as we know it. When a malach appears to a navi, according to the Rambam anyway, that's always in prophetic vision. Even according to the other Rishonim, it takes on a very airy, ephemeral, it kind of envelops itself in the elements, so it takes on it's like a pseudo body. A pseudo body, not a body as we know it. But you're raising a very good point. You're raising a good point. And we meant to discuss this. We're going to contrast a neshama with a malach in course of tonight's presentation, but I need to go step by step, right? Step by step, because the Ramchal just said that one fact about what the neshama does to the body,
right,
that the body wouldn't do for itself with its own life force, right? It didn't say how the neshama does that, and we're going to get to that, right?
One other question: this 10,000.
That the Ramchal builds that
That's
model.
The Ramchal, but there's others. There's really.
So I would trust the Ramchal. The 6,000 is for this world.
Okay.
This world. So before we hear the 6,000, before we hit the 6,000 mark, unless we got the dates wrong, assuming that our calendar is correct, and assuming that Gemara is to be taken literally, the Rambam and the Gemara, wonders whether we have to take it so literally. But we have to have Mashiach and Tchias HaMesim before that. Before you hit 6,000.
Before you hit 6,000.
Because at 6,000 it's game over.
Oh, and then we have from 6,000 to 10,000?
That's right, but it's in a whole gradation. 7,000 is like the Grand Shabbos, everything is closed. Mm-hmm. Closed for renovations, right. And that's when Hashkosh said that Tzadikim Knafayim, Veshatim Al Pnei Amayim. That's the 7th millennia, that the wings are really the koach of the neshama sustaining the body during that time. In the 8th, when HaKadosh Chozer Mechar Shalomo, the body begins to evolve.
And that's Olam Haza still. That's what.
No, I'm saying the 8th millennium is Olam Haba.
That's already Olam Haba.
That's the new world. That it starts in the 8th millennium, but it's not fully developed until the 10th. It's a work in progress.
Okay.
But even the 7th millennium is a 7,000 closed for renovation. It's the Grand Shabbos. It's 1,000-year Shabbos. 7th millennium. It's like Ke'elef Shanim Beinecha Kiyom Esmo. It is the Grand Cosmic Shabbos. Everything is closed. And on the 8th millennium, it's the new week, as it were. Like the Sunday is the 8th day. Right. Okay. So the neshama, one thing that the neshama does is that it evolves the body. Something which the body can't do for itself. Okay, but then the Ramchal later in the Derech Hashem qualifies this more, and this is Chelik Gimel Perek Aleph, and he says the punchline over here, which is the real essence of the neshama, something which the Nefesh HaChaim elaborates on in the next paragraph that I quoted. But he says like this, and this is really the essence of what it is. Omnam muvad kol zeh nimtzo baram metzias nafshi nivdo ve'limod. Meidach b'yas baram el kashro b'shoroshim al-yonim she'esho li kasher bam. You know what the neshama is? The neshama is to give the body a connection to the higher realms. That is why it came into the body. Right? And that's what causes, this is the mechanics, says the Ramchal, that when I do a mitzvah, it affects the whole world. It affects the cosmos. Why? You're here on earth. You shook your lulav. So, at most you benefited yourself. All right, there's even more. Like if I would pay a person $5 to take a broom and shake it in all directions, you would say, he got the better end of the deal. He got definitely overpaid for 1 minute of work. So why is it that when you shake lulav, you're going to get olam haba, you're going to get eternality? Where's the midah keneged midah? Don't we say that we're sent here to work, so we should feel like we rightfully earned? It's a joke. You did something, virtually symbolic relative to the reward that you got. So the Ramchal is answering that question over here. Said, no, that action that you did in physical, you only saw the physical side of that action. But because you have a neshama in your body, and the neshama remains, and this is the important point, it remains tied to the higher realms, as we're about to learn, and Nefesh HaChaim, builds this up more. When we say your neshama entered the guf, it didn't enter your guf to the exclusion of being in heaven. Now, it resents being in the guf at all, but only the most bottom aspect, called the nefesh, inhabits your body. This is called ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida. They never entered the body. They remain in those higher realms, right, connected to Hashem. Right? So when you do an action on earth, it sends vibes all the way up the neshama, because the neshama was involved in the mitzvah, but it vibes, and it creates cosmic reverberations. Now those cosmic reverberations are powerful. We don't see with our flesh eyes what our mitzvahs accomplish, because the neshama is carrying those vibes and making differences in all the different realms to the highest places in heaven. If you could see what you accomplish with the mitzvah because you have a neshama, you would understand how the mitzvah deserves olam haba. Right? We only see the physical side of the action, right? But because we have a neshama, that's why the mitzvah reverberates. And that's why, not only lo mibai, you can't give a mitzvah to an animal. If you give a mitzvah to an animal, it won't make a difference. But as we're going to learn later in the series, even by Goyim, they don't have a neshama like we do that causes this cosmic difference. They have a type of neshama that, in the words of the Ramchal that we will learn later in the series, they can only change their own fate, but they can't change the world. We could optimize the cosmos. We could make the world full of bracha. We could do a mitzvah and make the economy better. We can bring rainfall, and they can't do that. They can only do things that affect their own fate. So that in their quasi neshama that they have, that we will yet learn. But the ikar nekuda over here is that the neshama is here's the point, trans-dimensional creature. It didn't come into the body to be in the body and not in heaven. That would defeat the purpose. It's in the body to make a connection to heaven, and that's where, that is where the power of the mitzvahs comes from. Otherwise, mitzvahs wouldn't make a difference. What's the difference between shaking a lulav and twirling a broom around? And now we're going to learn, and this was something which the Hasidim and the Misnagdim had a little bit of a question of emphasis. Everyone agrees that only mitzvahs work that way. If I stand on my head and spit nickels, I never understood what that expression means, but what people say, right? If I would stand on my head and spit nickels, right, it's not going to send any vibrations up to heaven. Only mitzvahs do that. It's a certain type of action that accesses the power of the neshama, right? Or if you do something l'shem shamayim, not everything that we do is going to tap into this awesome power. Only mitzvahs. Now, now everyone agrees that more doing it lishma,
or lo taseh,
right, or avoiding lo taseh, right, doing something that is within the halachic system, right. the halachic system. Now everyone agrees that doing it also with ahava and yira makes it more spiritual and involves more neshama, puts more neshama into the action. Is the emphasis on that it's halacha, or is the emphasis on the ahava, the yira, and the hachana, and the lishma? It's a little bit of a conflict between the Hasidim and Misnagdim, particularly by davening, the trade-off of whether the ikar is the zman tefillah, because of tefillah shalom bisman, it's not a mitzvah anymore, so it's not going to work. That was Nefesh HaChaim's taina, who was the, the exponent of the Misnagdim. Where Hasidim say, well, maybe, yeah, and I guess it's not as big of a machlos people make out, because they're relying more on the b'di'evet, so we'll do it b'di'evet, but we also have the av of a yira, so maybe that supplements. It was a big machlokas. You put the emphasis on the koach of halacha to bring out the power of the neshama, or do you put on the emphasis on the ava, the yira, and the lishma to bring out the koach of the neshama, right? But everyone agrees that what the other person is saying is perfectly valid. The question is the balance.
But wouldn't every side agree that the mitzvahs are there to as the kalim to tap into this power of the neshama, meaning that like our Yitzchak and Yaakov didn't need the mitzvahs or the way the mitzvahs were given to us. They were able to tap in to the neshama their own way. So in the same, what I'm saying is that the same way, like yes, maybe we're not the level that Misnagdim would say we're not at that level, so we need the mitzvahs to tap into the neshama, whereas the Hasidim are saying, no, you could somehow, theoretically, or have such simcha, or such yira, or such a connection in a moment that you could tap into your neshama.
Okay. I can't speak for what the Hasidim hold. I only know off the top of my head what the Nefesh HaChaim says about that. And he says, indeed, that the Avos, their mitzvahs don't do what our mitzvahs do. Right? Their mitzvahs, as it were, move the pieces of reality around. They didn't rewire reality. The Avos, when they did their mitzvahs, not mitzvah v'oseh, not mitzvah v'oseh, right? And we know Gadol mitzvah v'oseh, Mimishenu mitzvah v'oseh. So doing the mitzvahs voluntarily. So look, there's essential truth to these actions, but since they didn't have the divine authorization, the Avos did not rewire reality with the mitzvahs that they did. Right? They didn't rewire reality. Ever since Matan Torah, says the Nefesh HaChaim, right? Says Nefesh HaChaim, since Matan Torah, our mitzvahs actually changed the world fundamentally, right? So the Avos were able to the Avos were able to move the pieces around to optimize, but not fundamentally rewire. So I want to tell you something very nice from, the question is like this: why did the Ribono Shel Olam withhold the Torah from the Avos? Gadol mitzvah v'oseh mimi she'eno mitzvah v'oseh. Why would Hashem want to withhold that goodness? Give them the commands and give them the mile of Gadol mitzvah v'oseh. So I heard from my Rebbe, Rav Yaakov one, Rav Shiva ben Yisrael, he said a word like this: you can't give Torah to Yechidim, because Torah is infinite, and also, but he put the emphasis on another aspect, that it's a bris olam, it's an eternal covenant. You cannot make an eternal covenant, or for that matter, to a yachid who's here today and gone tomorrow. Only a nation is a receptacle large enough to hold the Torah. So Ribono Shel Olam had to wait until Am Yisrael was beside Am, because once you're an Am, you're a corporate entity that never dies, because every generation is a part of the corporation. But if you give the Torah to a yachid, that yachid is in the kever tomorrow, right? You can't make a bris olam with a yachid, right? So the Ribono Shel Olam had to wait till Am Yisrael became an Am, and that's the secret, that all the neshamas were at Har Sinai. It was given to a corporation, Morosha Kihilas Yaakov, because only a nation is a eternal thing that never dies. So you can give an undying covenant to only some entity that in itself is undying, which is an Am. Right? But the Nefesh HaChaim is very adamant that that when the Avos did the mitzvahs voluntarily, they were just moving the pieces around, in his words, to optimize. And he links it to why you will find that they were always, they served Elokim, right? So Avram, so as Elokim is Salach Noach, so the Avos Avram went Lifnei Elokim. But you always find the term Elokim, not Yud Kei Vav Kei, right? Because they were optimizing the powers of reality, but only optimizing. They weren't evolving, right? Our Torah mitzvahs evolves reality, much like the neshama evolves the guf. So the mitzvahs that we do, which unleashes the koach neshama, also sends new energy, and is the one thing that the Adam does that no one else, no other creature in reality does this. All other creatures in reality, everything is top down, right? Hashem is gozer, and first, as it were, the event first happens in Ruchnius, and then goes down to a lower plane, until it happens in Gashmias, right? When the snow falls, so the gzera that the snow falls happened first in heaven, and then the ministering angels can, do it in their way, and then, in Gashmias it happens, at the bottom of the chain. Everything goes top down, from divine order to the higher creature that conveys it to the lower creature. Besod hakol bidei shamayim. Chutz mi yiras shamayim, which is free will. Right? And that's what the Ramchal says, also on the source sheet that we learned tonight. The neshama gives us free will. Because the neshama enables us to do things bottom up. Bottom up. Right? Alright, so there's a...
Bottom up, just to be clear, bottom...
We start on earth.
We could be a mashpia.
We could be a mashpia. It starts on earth, and the reverberations go heavenward. The Adam is the one creature like that, because of the neshama that mainly remained in heaven, right? It's more in heaven than it is in your body, and that's the function, says the Ramchal. To make it that our maisim on earth will make a difference, a cosmic difference, and that's what makes your maisim worth olam haba. If they would just be physical actions, why are they worth olam haba? Right? So
how does our way to work? Does it work? Here's like the status of excellence of Avodah, and like we have to like reach that goal, or do we decide what our Avodah is really supposed to look like? Meaning, which way is it working? Is it we need to get to a goal and it's A, B, and C, or it's up to us to sort of complete what we think is the Avodah?
All right. You guys are raising questions we're going to deal with much later in this series.
No, I never thought of it as us.
No. But now he's getting into a very important point. Why do we need so many Jews, so many neshamas? So the Baruch Hashem actually divided up the cosmic work across many different Jews, across many different generations. Between all of us, the work gets done. The Ramchal, one of his Talmidim, has a book called Das Vos Chelek Sheni. He asked the following question. Let's say me and another Jew are sitting at a lunch table at the same time. I'm eating kosher, and I'm being omen b'nisayin not to eat the treif he's offering me, and he's eating treif. How does that average out in the olamas? One guy's doing the tikkun of eating kosher, and at the same time and at the same place, someone's doing the pagam of eating treif. How does that average out cosmically? Do they cancel each other out? What happens? His model is that every one of us is hooked up into the entirety of the cosmos in a different way. All right, so even if we're arevim zelazeh, and I'm gonna suffer maybe for not protesting or not teaching you, but you can't offset what I do right. What I've done right is, I'm hooked into, so even though we're learning about the neshama is everyone's trans-dimensional along his own unique route. So you're eating treif at the same time that I'm eating kosher is not going to cancel out the tikkun of my eating kosher. So even if we are ravim zelzeh, that means I should educate you.
This isn't just the general ledger. It's right.
But
I said it's not. It's not. That's one level of look. I mean, the bottom level is just purely schar v'onish, accounting debits and credits. It's like Rav is saying, is that everybody has their unique connection and path
right
to the bigger cosmic cosmic reality.
Yeah, no, but of course there's we do have to deal with our kesher to each other, So it's a very complicated thing, but we also have to know everyone has his own unique path. But there is such a concept that if you totally goof off, a person wasted his whole life, right? And did not do his job that he was born to do, someone else could pick up that job, right? Whether you're going to come back begilgal or sometimes someone else just picks it up. And that's the secret for we find interesting lashon in Chazal. No tel chelko v'chelek chavero began eden. What do you mean? If I earned it, it's all mine. What do you mean? I took my chelek and the chelek of my friend. Manavshach, if I earned it, it's mine. Right? So it's like, well, chelko v'chelek chavero. If I earned it, it's all mine. Kula shali. No, the pshat is like this. This was meant to be his chelek in Gan Eden. That was his mission. He screwed up. I picked up his job. And I did his job instead of him. So I was my chelek that I was always created to get. And I picked up his chelek also because he was a total goof-off. And I had to do his work for him. For him cosmically, but I get the scar. So it's called, I took the chelek those bets and meant for someone else. All right. We'll just read this in the Nefesh HaChaim. It's so beautiful. The Nefesh HaChaim Shalaf Perek Hey. The Kikar Adam Unatua Lamala Brosha. The Ikar of the Adam is really above in the Shorosh HaNeshama. The Zof Nikra Guf Now Ayin B'Tikkun. That's why the body is called in Tikkunei Zohar the shoe, right? The shoe of the neshama. Most of the neshama is up there. The body's just the shoe, right? It's only like the heels from that root that go into the body of the person. Right, this lashon of the famous Mishra. Right, Kosh didn't want the cosmos to be jealous of each other. Right? On the first he created heaven and earth, that's equal. Shemaim and Oretz, 1 point for Shemaim team, 1 point for Eretz team. Right? Basheni Rakia, that's a point for Shemaim team. Right? Bashlishi Tach Eretz, that's Oretz team. Because on Daud he created the celestial bodies, Shemaim team. And on Hay he created, the fish and the birds, Oretz team. Right? Bashishi Balav Adam. So on the 6th day he came to create the Adam. Right? If I create him only from heaven, it's unfair. It'll be heaven team will be up 1 point over Oretz team. That's if he's totally heavenly. Right? If it's the same problem. It'll be a point. Oretz will be up 1 point. Offer a mina adam, so that's going to make him a composite. So now it's perfectly the tie is maintained because Oretz from earth and neshama from heaven. So Nefesh Chaim says, I challenge this medrash, because if we're going to understand that the neshama is in the guf, just the opposite. Oretz is up by 2 points. It got the guf and it got the neshama, which is even more of a shtoch. It stole from the Elyonim. Right? So right? So Elamah, right? The truth is like this is the pshat, because the neshama remains in heaven and it transverses infinite dimensions all the way down to the body. The neshama never stopped being in heaven, right? It stays rooted in heaven, and that's the secret of the Pintel Yid, our anchor, that we never lose our emunah, right? And it goes, transverses through infinite dimensions throughout the whole totem pole of reality till the aspect, its bottom aspect is in the body, right? That's the secret. Paul says Hashem, the chelik of Hashem is his nation, but Yaakov chevel nachasa, a rope of inheritance, right? Sheikoro kosher v'natula mala chelek havaya mamish kaviyachol. The ikar, the roots are mamish chelek havaya. That's what we say chelek okami mal. Not that we're a piece of God, but we're connected to God. We have dvekas. As Rosh Shiva Rav Yaakov used to say, kol and chelek is a relationship, like you're a part of a family. Doesn't mean I cut you from the family. You're mitchaber with the family. When we say chelek elokam imao, chelek Hashem amo means the neshama is a creature that was created to have dvekus in Hashem, in a type of relationship like being a part of a family, the whole relationship. It's not a physical division, and that's the shorish haneshama, right?
That I was gonna ask before. I think
Yeah.
is the answer is that because I was gonna ask is. How does the idea of Tselem Elokim?
All right, so Tselem Elokim is we're going to come to that. We're not even there yet. Tselem Elokim is the meta system. I'll just drop the spoiler. It's the meta system that holds body and soul together. Because we're explaining what one is, we're explaining what the other is. What is the system that encompasses both of them? Is the Tselem, as we're going to learn. Right, the Pella that keeps the body. So that the Tselem is the whole that's greater than the sum of the parts. The whole that's the real you. Because the question that, you'll sleep tonight, right? You're going to ask, go home now, am I a body, am I a soul? When I decide something, did I decide it with my body, did I decide my soul? Right? Who am I? Right? And we're going to discuss that. The real answer to that, since you raised questions, is that you are a Tselem Elokim, and the Tselem is the meta system that holds the two together. And we'll prove that from the Lashons of Chazal. When you will be judged at the end of time, you will be judged not as a soul, not as a body. Ribosh is going to, that's why it has to be Tchias HaMesim before the Yom Hadin HaGadol. We have to be judged as body and soul together.
It's both together.
That's the Tselem. That's the Tselem, and that's.
Chatzi Hashem, Chatzi Lachem. We're the opposite. It's both.
So it's like a type of Bria.
That emerges from the two together.
Right.
And that's the real you.
Mm-hmm.
You're not your parts. Right? You're your parts, and there's the you that emerges. That's your Tselem.
But it doesn't.
Right,
Which part of that? 'Cause I always took it to mean Tselem Elokim means that we have a piece of Hashem with us or in us.
Well, no, that's not a piece of we have something divine, but it's not a piece of Hashem. It's what he said over here, and that's what Rosh Shiva used to say. And I say it in my book on Yud Gimel Ikrim, Chelek Elokam Mimal, that the neshama has a dvekus in Hashem. That's what it means.
One day also that B'nidei Kanafa,
Right,
the Ficha is not your breath,
right.
never part of you.
That's right.
It's just air that you breathe in and you breathe out.
Right. So
Even that expression.
right. Man nafach mitoche nafach. Right. We bring that in the Sefer, I do believe. Right. That's what you don't. When you blow up a balloon and the balloon flies away, you didn't lose a piece of yourself, even though at the time you blew, you thought you put your whole lungs in there. Right. There's a type of intimate relationship like a kiss, which is sharing a breath. As a matter of fact, that's what Chazal say. Yishakeni minashikos pihu was matan tarav, and Rav Chaim explains we felt our neshama at the time. Right, and that's the kiss. That's sharing the breath. So it's a connection. It's like a kiss. It's a dvekus.
I just have to point out
Yes.
that
Yes.
the Abus have the same neshama from the Yisrael Guf.
I mean, yeah, they had the same neshama, but they were limited because, the way I understand it, I can't say for sure, but as I understand it, they had a Yiddish neshama, as you call it, but since they weren't an Am, they couldn't begin their mission properly. They just laid down the potential that got actualized by Yetzias Mitzrayim. And we're going to come to that. We're going to be actualized by Yetzias Mitzrayim when we became an Am. That's going to relate to Dibur, that we're going to get to in a second. Yeah.
And then also in his approach, so if someone right now is in a mitzvah ba'oseh,
Right.
so
That action is more body than it is soul.
is it going to
It is the chiyuv of the halacha that unleashes the power of the neshama.
right? So you would understand that
You get schar, you get something for it. It's not because
you would understand that even them, even though they would be like they would not be, even though they're part of Yisrael now, they still wouldn't get that same connection. Let's say a summa or something like that.
Right. Well, assuming we paskin is chayv mitzvahs.
Right.
Right. But you mean a cherish.
Right.
Right. You mean the cheresh? It's not a bardas. You know, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu mekapech schar kol birya, but it's not.
Isha and
Right. So so the Ramchal says that mufurash that the eno mitzvah vosa doesn't change the world with his mitzvah, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu will always give schar for anything done right. But the mitzvah va'osa has the mission, that tzivui unleashes the power of the neshama. Besides, it also unleashes the power of the Torah, because the Torah addressed it to him. It's a combo. All right, but it goes together in tandem. When the power of the Torah is unleashed, the power of the neshama is unleashed. Otherwise, without that, it's a regular bodily action. What brings out the neshama, the koach of Torah in the action, is what brings out the neshama in the action and makes it cosmic.
Right.
that's what we need Nashim B'Mat Kazak.
Right, correct. Okay, and so I just want to let's finish this Nefesh HaChaim, then we'll speak out the rest. We'll see how going into overtime over here. But it's just such a beautiful Nefesh HaChaim. So Yaakov also what's a cheva, like a rope? Right? The neshama is like a long rope going from the highest place in heaven all the way until it reaches a body. And all your deeds on earth awaken your root in heaven, like a string, like a rope that goes from, you tie it to the ceiling and it goes all the way down. You shake the bottom edge of the rope. Right? The wave goes up to the top of the rope. Right? All right, without getting into all the Kabbalah over here. But so now if you flip the page, so the Ramchal over there that we bring, I'll say it outside, it's like, right? What's so Derech Hashem, Chelik Gimel, Perek Gimel, how it says this is where Nevuah comes from. The neshama being, trans-dimensional. That's how you could get a message from God. That's how you could get Ruach HaKodesh. And he differentiates over here between natural learning that comes from the biochemical life force. We are naturally intelligent, supposedly, right? So he describes in Sif Aleph over here what you take in through your senses, right? Through your eyes, your ears, right? Through you absorb information, you process that information, you compare. That's all physical. You don't need a neshama for that. That's natural learning. Animals learn that way also, right? They see, they remember. You could train them. That's natural. But there's spiritual thinking, and that's when an idea falls into your head. It's not that you calculated the idea, you didn't extrapolate it. So he explains that because we have a neshama, we can have a different type of intelligence. Mm-hmm. An intelligence he calls seichel mushba, emanated intelligence, right? That we have this huge antenna called a neshama. We could just perceive things, not calculate things, not figure things out, just perceive them as they truly are. Which, and he says that the difference between this way of thinking and that way of thinking is mamash the difference between guf thinking and neshama thinking, right?
Is that compared to instinct and sixth sense? So he's saying, he says over there in that same parak, I didn't bring the whole parak, that there are different levels. It's on the highest level of absolute clarity and totally reliable, there's nevuah. That's, right. But there's like levels of Ruach HaKodesh. There's also levels that are even less than that, called afagav di'iulo chaze, mazle chaze. All of a sudden you feel a fear, right? And the Gemara describes this with Daniel. He got a nevuah, but even the people with him shuddered, even though they weren't having the vision. And the Gemara says, even though they didn't see it, their mazel, meaning their shorish haneshama, perceived it, and it sent a vibe. Right? It sent a vibe, right?
And it's interesting. It sounds like the real way to have, this, nevuah and to see all this is when your guf and your neshama is like balanced together. Meaning, if someone's a Baal Gaiva,
right,
then it's completely out of whack. He's more guf, and his head is thinking about other things. Then he can't have that balance to grow. And to have
no, you're 100% correct. And the Rambam brings the halacha and Hilchos Yesodei Torah. The Navi has to be have a straight head and good midas, and if not, and also he writes in the Mar Nevuchim, he also has to have a developed sense of imagination, because that's the kli that forms the images as a result of the shefa. The shefa is mashpia on the dimyon to form the images, right? And if he doesn't have that, then he call him psychic, call him a faker. He's not a navi. He can't be a navi. As a matter of fact, clearance to become a navi, halachically, is first one is you check if he's Baal Midas Tovas. Not a Baal Midas Tovas, he could split the Pacific Ocean. We don't care. Because he can't be a navi. He's just not shaykh because of what God he said. It is not possible that he's getting, his body is not a kli to be makabel. He's not worthy. That is 100% correct. Right? So the neshama being transdimensional, so that's what facilitates Ruach HaKodesh. Right? Ruach HaKodesh. Nevuah, getting, and of course, Seichel Mushba, the Seichel that we have when we calculate, we're approximating. We could be off. We're speculating. It's a calculation. Sometimes the calculation is very tight. Sometimes the calculation is rather loose and more speculative. Of course, Ruach HaKodesh is the thing itself. That's what Rashi says, by Betzal, Chachma, Tvuna, Ubedas. Chachma is what a person hears from his Rebbe. Tvuna is what you figure out yourself. Das, like real knowledge, Rashi says, Ruach HaKodesh. The real knowing of something is, your eyes could be fooling you. You only know what it looks like. You only know what it sounds like. The thing itself, right? That you could only get to know the thing itself, as Kant used to call it, only with Ruach HaKodesh. The Das. To really know something with absolute clarity is Ruach HaKodesh. That's the reliable information you get from Seichel Mushba. Right? Seichel Mushba, and that the neshama enables that. All right. So now in the bottom of the source sheet, Derech Eitz Chaim. So now he said, he puts out another thing. The neshama gives free will. Right? The neshama gives bechira. Right? Something which the angels don't have. Right? So now we're going to get into something very fundamental. Right? About the difference between angels and human beings. And it really boils down to this. Angels may be very spiritual. They may be very holy. They are not transdimensional. Right? And that's why, as he points out, they're called Omdim. And you should notice from Rashi in Parshas Vayera. Right? Why you send 3 malachim to Avram? Because ein malach oseh shtei shlichus. They can only do one thing. That is because they are stuck on their unique madrega, right? And they are just inclusive of their madrega, not higher, and generally speaking, not lower, right? Not lower, right? What happens if a malach falls from his madrega? The nephilim, right? They became big Baalei Avera, Azza and Azael, hence the Azazel, which is Maramis on them, the Nephilim, right? They said, what's this man? So HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought them down into a guf, right? And they failed because the transdimensional aspect of the neshama is what enables Bechira. So let's say your Yetzer Hara is challenging you on this level, right? But your neshama also has a level above that. Your neshama is transdimensional all the way up. So you could draw koach from above where the nisayon is, to overcome the nisayon. A malach, if you would make it susceptible to a Yetzer Hara, has no programming to win, right? Because once you make it vulnerable, it is what it is. So now it's vulnerable, it will be nichshol. And that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu demonstrated with the Nephilim. He put these malachim in bodies, made them susceptible to Yetzer Hara, and they were toast. It's a recipe for disaster as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. They were made vulnerable. You gave them the Yetzer Hara. They're nichshol. They don't have a higher aspect of themselves that they can tap into to overcome. The Adam is called a holech because we could climb the ladder of our own neshama. Right? And that's what gives Bechira. So now this is not taught well in yeshivas. They tell you angels, angels don't have Bechira, and that's why they don't do wrong. That's not accurate. Angels don't have Bechira because it wouldn't make because they're not transdimensional. Right? The reason why they don't sin is because they don't have a Yetzer Hara. But give them a Yetzer Hara, they will fail. Give them a Yetzer Hara, they will fail, right? So they don't sin because they don't have a Yetzer Hara. Bechira is the koach to overcome the Yetzer Hara. And only the Adam has it because of how an Adam could always tap into a higher power
They're not
above where the Nisayan is happening to choose.
They're not at Son Elokim.
They're not so okay. Correct.
And on the opposite way too, it's the malachim of a total, complete bal guf, right? Which doesn't have in a way bechira either. It's not real good, right? Somebody who's not connected to their neshama and is a complete bal guf, I guess a behema,
Someone-
you know,
someone
or
told
a
me.
person that's like a behema. You can argue that's not bechira.
Okay, so fine. So my Rebbe, Yaakov, I'll deal with your question. There's Yaakov on the screen. The Bechira
Yeah.
means, so first of all, ask, does the average psychiatrist or psychologist believe in Bechira?
No.
No. That's a man's program. Listen, you're wired up the way you're wired up, right? And many scientists who believe we live in a mechanical universe of
Right.
cause and effect. So where's Bechira? Free
Right.
will. Wait a minute, it's dominoes. It's
Right.
all dominoes. Well, it's your biochemical dominoes.
Right.
And yet we believe in Bechira that even with 100%, taiva, right? You could still overcome.
Correct.
Right? Where does it come from? Because the neshama is transdimensional, and you could
Right.
draw koch from a higher place, and the neshama is it's because it's transversal, it's mobile, right? So the neshama could draw koach, right, from above, right? So if you believe in a closed circuit, so it's all dominoes, but the neshama taps into a higher power. Right? That could be machriya, even though on the level where the starts happening, all the deck is stacked against it. But the neshama comes from a higher place, or has an aspect, wherever the sign is, there's a higher aspect to tap into, and make the decision from there. So my Rebbe Moshe Shapiro told us in Shir that, it is a mistake to say, the other best bechira, animals make choices all the time, right? No, he shared with us his experience of observing stray cats in Beit Vagan. They look, they smell this garbage bin, they smell that garbage bin, and they decide this one, they like this one better. They look, whether they want to take a jump or they want to go down that way. So he observed, they're making decisions. They make decisions, but how do you define a decision? Is it decision? Really, for us and for animals, sadly, is that it's a tug of war. You have two different taivas, chocolate or vanilla, you only have money for one scoop, right? Chocolate, right? So, right? Why? Because the taiva for chocolate was stronger. Mm-hmm. It was a tug of war.
Okay.
And if I would have known your taivas, I could have calculated what you done. And he says, that's not Bechira. Animals decide like that all the time. And he was going on to say the tragedy that a person could go his whole life and never use the koach of Bechira even once. Should I become a doctor? Should I become a lawyer? The lawyer, but the doctor may have to work on Shabbos. I'll become a lawyer because I need my day of rest. It was just he chose the path called the stronger taiva or the path of least resistance. That's not Bechira. The godless of Bechira is that it comes from a higher place. That even if all the taiva is against you, in his words, I won't do it because I won't do it. Because of the I. It comes from the I, not because of the taiva or because I'm embarrassed if I'll be caught. The decision comes from the I. I am the only cause for this decision.
Back to Gadi's point of the Bechira comes from a perfect balance of the Elyonim and the Tachtonim.
Oh yeah, I mean,
And that's what we do ultimately by Maitim. We tell Hashem equally. We're telling Hashem, Noidalacha Achayenu HaMesirim Yedecha V'al Nishmeiseinu HaBekutzlach. We're thanking Hashem for that perfect balance of our Chayenu, our physical Chayenu, and our Nishmeiseinu, our Neshama. And when we get to that level where then they can both coexist, then it's Noidalacha, that it's a complete
yeah.
full thing.
But the point of Bechira again is that the I the I is the cause of the choice, not the taiva. Not the
Right.
taiva or the busha of being caught.
What's better for me, what's.
The I, not
yeah.
the I.
Right.
So you tap into a part of you that's above the whole fray. And okay, this is what the Yetzer Tov telling me. This is what the Yetzer. What do I want to do? That there's an I that's on a higher level, that's above the fray, and with that koch, you could go even against a 90% taiva. Yeah.
Is that the point of the Muslim movement?
I can't. I don't know which. There are many schools of the Muslim movement. I can't.
In general.
What?
To overcome that, to make the decision based on the I as opposed to the.
Well, you said my Rebbe was saying that is the yesod of Bechira, that is the unique power of the neshama. Just giving in to, the more reasonable thing, right? Or the more appealing thing, which is how sadly we make most of our decisions in life. You're not tapping into the koch of Bechira. You're not tapping into that unique koch. So you said you was Hilam, and the person goes his whole life and never really been. You made a lot of choices, but you're never really bocher ever,
Well,
right?
We are Beicher when we're used to doing an Avera. I mean, then again and again and again and again and another Avera. And then I decide I'm not going to do that Avera. That's Bechira.
Yes, that's Bechira. That's an example. Yeah, tshuva is. You say tshuva is tikkun koach bechira. Moshe used to say. That's it. Tshuva is a very prime example of changing your bechira. What's tshuva gemura? It's the same woman. Tshuva, same woman, same taiva, same place, and you didn't do it. Why? Bechira. He said. That's right. No, that's what he said. He explained in that same shir. That's the secret that the Ram put his treatise on Bechira in Ilchos Tshuva. That's what Tshuva is. It's to tap into the Bechira. Right? Okay, so we'll just end off on one point. 2 points. The first one, the source sheet we brought from the Rambam, Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah. We're not going to read it inside this time, but the Rambam says that your neshama gives you the ability to understand malachim, right? Or things about Hashem, right? We don't need the neshama for mathematics or anything of earthly pursuits. It's again, and that the neshama gives our ability to understand these things because the neshama is trans-dimensional, and that's why we can understand things that are beyond our dimension. So what we know about Ruchnius, what we know metaphysics, Kabbalah, that's all with your neshama. Now, it is true that the Mekubalim say you really need your neshama to understand anything from Torah, because Shor Shenagachas HaPara or Shnayim Mochsim B'Talis is only cosmetically similar to secular law, but innately it is, right, it is from Shamayim, and that's true, but a person could delude themselves into thinking that they understand Shor Shenagachas HaPara or, Shnayim Mochsim B'Talis if he learns Torah without deploying the neshama, which is what the necessity of Amilos B'Torah is to deploy the neshama, right? But by Kabbalah, you would never even get started, right? Because the whole subject matter is the abstract, and that's why by learning Kabbalah, where you have to access the Koch of the neshama, that's why the Sfarim say you have to be worthy and you should go to the mikveh, and because you need to deploy the neshama for something, learning about something that's beyond our physical dimension. The biochemical intelligence understands what's from here, the sciences, right? And whatever, and how to deal with people. That's the biochemical intelligence can handle that just fine, right? But you need the neshama for the abstract things that are beyond our dimension. That's what the Ram writes in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah. And he says something very charif, that a person has to have epis shaychus, seemingly the Yud Gimel Ikra Zav. You have to know something about God to be immortal. If your neshama never tapped in, this is a sheet of the Rambam. If your neshama never tapped in to understanding something beyond, why should it live after you die? We retain your identity, your consciousness. You never used your neshama. You never used your neshama, right? So that's what he writes. So it's pretty. It's in Hilchos Torah here, but I just want to get to one more point. Dibur, and this ties into what I was telling Shlomo before, that the Yitzias Mitzrayim was when the Avos went into exile. They built up potential, but we had to become an Am for that to go into actuality. For all the Hashem made promises to the Avos, the delivery on those promises was by Yetzias Mitzrayim, right? So now we find in the Arizal something very interesting. It's already in the Tikkunei Zohar that until Yetzias Mitzrayim, the Dibur was in Golus. The Dibur was in Golus, and Yetzias Mitzrayim, aside with our liberation, speech got liberated, and that's why Kol Hamarbe Lesaper B'Yetzias Mitzrayim Reza Meshubach. Let's say nice, just talk and talk. More description is better, and that's what the Tikkunei Zohar says. Pesach. What happened? But that's the point. What is Dibur? That we say it only comes from the Neshama. Dibur is transdimensional. We are violating our speech if all we use our speech for is nothing qualitatively better than how a dog barks. The dog, I have a golden retriever, it communicates. There's certain sounds I know it wants food, certain sounds I know it wants to go out, and I have mating calls, right? It's sad to say, but remember the comic strip The Far Side? Gary Larson. It's one of the things that it's not as funny unless you see it, Vayinecha Ro says Marecha, but he had one of his frames, mating calls. So you have a dog going woof woof, and a bird going chirp chirp, and a man going hey baby, right. If all you use your dibur for is for the same stuff that the animals use it for, the dibur's in Golus, right? The dibur's in Golus, right? The dibur is transdimensional. You're supposed to chop ideas and bring those ideas into the world by putting them into speech. Right. So of course, the epitome of dibur are, there's two types: Torah and Tefillah. Torah is heavenly ideas put in words, and by putting them into words, we bring it into Olam Hazeh. And there's Tefillah, which is bottom up, right? So that's what dibur is, and that's what it means that the neshama gives dibur. The neshama is transdimensional. Dibur is supposed to be a transdimensional experience of bringing ideas into the world. The idea is nislabesh and dibur, and that's how it's communicated and brought into the world. Or vice versa, tefillah is to send dibur back up. Dibur is supposed to be transmitted. If all we use our dibur for is for the same stuff that the animals, do, or just that was called that the dibur was in Golus. So Yetzias Mitzrayim was also unleashing that power that the Avos built up the potential. It was unleashed in actuality with Yetzias Mitzrayim Matan Torah. It's called that speech finally got liberated. That the dibur was being used for the purpose of Torah and Tefillah. That is the point, and the idea of dibur, that human society should be, is that we should build a society based on ideas. But if our language has qualitatively not more than what the animals could also communicate about, parnasa, warning each other of danger, they can do all that. Then that's a chilul of the dibur. We've not tapped in. Dibur is supposed to be transdimensional, bringing ideas into the world or communicating, sending diburim up with the tefillah. Okay, that's tonight. That does it for tonight. Just one more thing. Someone, Yaakov Deo asked, he's tuning in all the way from Eretz Yisrael at 4 a.m. He asked, so if the, how can it be the guf when it says, Ba'or basar tal visheni? But the tselem, Yaakov, is not the flesh and blood, right? Even though that alone in this day and age is a madrega. Like Naomi Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi is more Botox than Buster Vadum, right? Right? Right, lave Botox. Anyway, the flesh is not the tselem. The tselem is the aspect of the body that is mergeable with the neshama. The fusion, the aspect of the body that fuses. But we're going to learn, as we're going to learn a little bit later when we get into Tselem, we're going to learn that the neshama and guf together is a cosmic map. It's a little mini model of all of reality. The body is special also. We haven't gotten there yet. The body is a microcosm of all Gashmias, just like, as we learned already tonight, the neshama is a microcosm of all ruchnias because it transverses all the different dimensions from the highest to the lowest. So between the body and the neshama, you have the entirety of the cosmic map. That's Tzelem Elokim. No, it's not the flesh and blood. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Right, it doesn't.
Another parallel to that is last week's parsha that at Har Sinai, right? That it said that the Shekhinah just came down, right? The Kisei HaKavod just resting on his right? The Shekhinah's legs right on top.
You can take it with you.
Har Sinai.
Okay, cool.
That where the rest of
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
the rest of the Shekhinah was up to the
my,
Shabbat, right? It was just the lower
email
part.
is Evan
Within 10
Shisia,
tefachim?
What?
Or is it
or
like
what,
within 10 tefachim, right, that idea?
EVENSHESIYA,
There's 10 tefachim right above Har Sinai. So
SIYA,
the Shekhinah will go.
SIYA.
Evan Shisia at
I think
Gmail.
I think
Not lower, okay.
it's just the Kisei HaKavod
Evan Shisia, all one word,
legs of the
EVNSHESIYA.
down.
And my cell phone is 917
The rest
612
of the Kisei HaKavod is all the way still up to
4778.
So
And
that's
I
what
have a
our
website,
neshama-
evanshisia.com.
Their bodies and shoe.
Okay, that's.
Okay,
fine.
fine.
Thank you.
Right.
When you say Moshe, who's the Rebbe?
Ramosha Shapiro.
I like it. It's very rough, shkoyach.
Rabbi, just quick
Yeah.
question. First of all, in terms of the Malachim and Bechira, so I always understood obviously that
Wow.
since it's a separate Bria, the Neshama, it's not the same as Ruchnius as everything else. So,
It is.
I mean, only an Adam would be Shayach to Bechira.
Yeah, yeah.
But the thing is though that, first of all, Rav Moshe, I didn't see this inside, but I've heard that he holds that Malachim, Malachim really would have Bechira, just that they're so overwhelmed by truth that therefore they're not Shayach, which I know Rav Yaakov Weinberg argued with very much. But the problem is that I saw something around Kol and Das Tfunos Mashma also. For me, at least, to me when I read it, it was mashma that Bechira Malach, meaning Malachim are shayach to Bechira, they're just so overwhelmed by truth
Oh, and
that
I remember Loshen in the Talmud of Ramchal Fakir, in the Daf Uniskel Sheni, he says that Malachim don't have Bechira, but they could malfunction. They're not perfect, right? They could malfunction. So that's why he says the pshat, like by stone, kimashchisim anachim. And so then they have to eat a piece of humble pie, it was a malfunction. Because since they, was what we alluded to over here, they went down in Madrega and they got confused.
right when the Tachtonim that they have.
Right.
But
But it's not Bechira like we have, because we put the emphasis on being misgaber over the rock. We have to also realize that it's a lot worse when we choose evil. That means I want to do evil. Right? It's not just the Yetzer. The Yetzer did it. No, I decide. Just like cause the misuse of the koch to be misgaber means I opted for it. That's what makes me more guilty.
Right, I'll find out Ramchal. He mentioned he wasn't really the main discussion. It was kind of agav. He was talking about the koach of the guf in the Zman, in one of the Zman when it's batal. And he says it's like the Malachim, which are so overwhelmed by truth that it's not shayach to the Bechira. So I was just thrown off by that lashon.
Which is obvious, right?
Maybe it makes sense they can't be gullible to a Yetzer Hara.
He's like, he's literally running around.
I'm just saying because before they wouldn't be shayach to the Bechira no matter even if they wouldn't have that truth.
And that's what, and that's it. That's what's going to change. That's what he says. When we found that they do wrong, he says even the Sitra Achra. He says even agreed.
The
Ramchal.
second one.
Ginzei Ramchal. And he says even when we say in the Zohar that the Sitra Achra was moired, it wasn't with Bechira. It malfunctioned.
Right.
It misunderstood its purpose.
Right. The question is when it's the Malachim in the Torah when they seemingly do wrong. Right. I understand that.
Yeah, so they malfunctioned.
Right.
Because they were sent to earth. They lost. The reception was bad. And they malfunctioned. He says even the Sitra Achra, its merit was a malfunction. Because they didn't have Bechira as we know it. He says, he explains what the malfunction was. It sensed that whenever people do a chet, it gets stronger. So it thought that that's my tachlis. My tachlis must be to get people to sin. For me, but yeah, that's
Obviously, right?
yes.
No, it's not obvious.
Right.
Hashem only puts
And then,
people on the side.
Right, in terms of the Bechira, right, where Dessler said that also that most people don't make a lot of choices during their life. And most of it's not Bechira.
Right.
For most people, right?
Yeah, that's very sobering.
Yeah, for sure. Because even if you think you're doing Bechira, it might not be, meaning it might just be that you're trained in that way, right? You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Right, there's choices, there's, I guess the way to say is, there's options and there's bechira.
Right, for sure. Decisions, I think that's the general,
Right.
that's the one.
Rav Shneich.
Yeah, right, so, Bezer Hashem, Thursday night, Bezer Hashem. We'll try, if you're able, if
I'll
able.
try,
All right, but it's always Zoom.
We'll talk, because I
Okay.
think that twice a week is.
Twice a week could be much, also like Monday nights are, they're like perfect for me. First day back at work, I got nothing, Monday night, Thursday.
No,
I'm
it's-
busy out
I
with my
if
wife.
it's-
maybe
Right.
like we need to come up with maybe some alternative
No, we could do it.
vehicles or maybe a piece or something online, like I think we should discuss, like,
Okay.
it shouldn't be, I agree there should be something more running and not just once a week, but I think let's utilize, maybe once a week in-person share,
And once a week online.
maybe online or like, or maybe just,
A clip.
sharing a clip or, a video or a
Combo
written
Thursday
piece
slash-
or something.
Slash like going into
Or
Shabbos,
hey,
like,
here's it's just even some Mari Makaimas,
Right.
just I think it could be a combination.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Something also like practical to.
And I would
The
like
Cliff and
also,
the
and I would
Shama is
also
something
I was just
that
thinking
we're
that-
constantly
yeah.
always.
maybe
finding
an
that
exercise. But I was also saying is like I think every week there's always some tie in or good for Shama, right? Even this week, as Ayin Tapa Science and everything. There's always something that has a connection.
I love
So
it.
maybe there should be like a weekly Parsha Mimer that ties into the idea of good for the Shama.
Love it. Shkoyach, Rav.
okay.